Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Robert Kaufman Fabrics, quality fabrics for quilting. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. And The Warm Company, inspiring products for creative people. Hi, and welcome to Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community. I'm Mary Kate Carpetras, and we are back again with Patrick Lose, who's our special guest for this 12-part series. And in this portion of the series, we've been talking with him about his life. In our last episode, we talked about his early life as an artist, or how he got started as an artist. And in this episode, we're going to be talking more about your life in theater and how that influenced your eventual work in the quilting industry. Right. So last we were talking, you had auditioned for a show in high school.
Yeah, and I was cast in the show, and you know, it was a blast, and I was bit by the theater bug. And from there on out, it was like the drawing and painting and things like that didn't matter as much, and I was driven to, in college then, get into the theater department, which I never, well, originally I kind of, you know, I was a little more grounded, and I thought I'll try the pre-med route and see if I like that.
Yes, do the sensible thing.
That was fine, you know,
Yes.
and I like that too, but it wasn't gelling, you know, it wasn't feeling like that's what my life was supposed to be. And so I switched majors into theater, and, you know, I was at the University of Iowa at the time, and to get into the theater department, you had to take a core of classes. You know, it wasn't, you couldn't just, I want to be an actor, or I want to be a singer. You had to do it all. You had to have a well-rounded experience in theater. And so the first year, you had to take what was called a costume practicum. And I was fine with taking a costume design class because I could draw and paint, and I thought, you know, that would be fun. But I didn't know that if you took that, you had to take the costume practicum, which it was 3 hours a day from 2 to 5 in the afternoon when all of my friends were at happy hour, and I'm having to sew costumes, which wasn't what I thought I was going to do in the first place. I thought I was going to be an actor, you know. But the first day in that class, again, I was struck by this woman that ran the class. She was the teacher, but also just a mentor, an amazing mentor. And I remember the first day of the class, she brought us all sketches. There was one other guy in the class, and there were only about 10 of us. And she singled me out right away, came up to me with a sketch of a ball gown that was going to appear on stage in The Merry Widow, the opera, that fall. And I knew nothing about opera, knew nothing about The Merry Widow, or designing or making costumes. And this sketch was beautiful. And she said, "You're going to make this." And I mean, deer in the headlights. Everything else she said almost went over my head. But she said, "You don't get a pattern," which I didn't even know what a pattern was at the time. You know, all you're going to do is, here she is, basically, and rolled this mannequin up to me and said, "You're going to drape the ball gown on this mannequin from scratch, and that's how you're going to come up with your pattern, and it is going to be on stage in a few weeks in the opera."
They didn't even give you muslin to work with first?
No, we did. We started with muslin, but I had never done any of this.
But still.
So, yeah, I mean, it was very intimidating, but it was a rush, too. I mean, I thought, seriously, she thinks I can do this? And she was just the nicest lady, and the costume was on stage in a few weeks. She actually said to me, first day of the class, "You're going to get an A." And I got an A, and you know, that day I asked her, "Well, what makes you think this?" And she said, "Guys just get this. You know, it's like putting together parts of things to make something else, you know," which quilting is a lot of the same thing. But she said, you know, it's sort of an innate thing for guys to put puzzles together, and making a costume or making a garment is like putting a puzzle together. And not that the girls didn't do well too, but they come at it maybe from a different viewpoint or angle. And from then on, I mean, I was really bit by the bug. I did go back to Des Moines Area Community College, and I took a commercial art program because I really wanted to build up my artistic ability. And working in the theater, you don't always have work. So I thought, you know, if I can be a graphic artist and, you know, still be working on my artistic abilities, I would have something to make a living at if I didn't stay in theater. So,
and when you say stay in theater, were you intending to pursue costume design,
both.
Or you were still wanting to be on stage, or
I loved it all.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't have as much of an interest in set design, probably because I didn't understand the mechanics of it as well.
It's
I wasn't.
the whole thing.
Yeah, building and things like that. But I knew I still wanted to be an actor, singer, and to design costumes, and it really didn't matter to me which. You know, I liked them all equally. So while I was at Des Moines Area Community College, I saw that the Des Moines Playhouse, which was like a local community theater, really amazing community theater, longest running I think in the country.
That's great.
Yeah, they needed a costume designer for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I thought, you know, I should just try it, bring him some sketches. And honest to God, I brought the sketches in that day, and I stayed with them for probably 5 years, and 75 productions maybe. It was a wonderful place to work, and again, the director at the theater was just amazing. He fostered and mentored, and, you know, basically let me have free reign. I didn't have to do sketches for every single costume in a show. I would just bring him the dress or whatever the costume was when it was made, and he's like, "That's great," you know. Said he had
Did
never.
he give you pretty free reign, or
Yeah.
was it more collaborative, or?
There was more collaboration when a part of the script depended on a costume. You know, when something had to happen. I mean, there was never anything as I don't know if you ever saw Sunday in the Park with
I was
George,
just thinking
but
Sunday in the Park.
yeah, where
It's very
Dot's
specific
dress,
based on the painting.
yeah,
It
well,
has to.
and Dot's dress at one point in that show has to open up,
Right.
and she walks out of it. It
Right.
stands on stage. It's operated by radio, and I mean, it was amazing. I got to interned with Patricia Ziprot on that show, and it was amazing. So really, the collaboration was more when something was dependent on that. But having that free reign, I think, is what let me really spread my wings, you know, and grow as a costume designer also. And when I was in college at Simpson College, I was a college hopper. I never did get a degree, but I went to a lot of colleges and took the courses that I really thought were going to benefit me in my career. And at that time, I had to write a paper. I had to contact a designer, write a letter to a designer, costume designer, and ask some questions and build that into a paper. And I contacted Patricia Ziprot, who was a very well-known Broadway designer. She did Cabaret, Sunday in the Park with George Pippin, you know, those kind of shows. And not only did I get an answer from her when I wrote her a letter with these questions, I put my phone number in there and she called me.
That's fantastic.
It was amazing. I mean, again, a case of a mentor who just really reached out and was willing to, you know, help someone give someone a leg up, I guess. And she asked me to come to New York and talk to her about a possible internship. And the reason that she did it, I found out later. Well, I visited her, and the next day, I was supposed to come and see her at her penthouse, and she was going to tell me, you know, what we were going to do if we were going to do an internship. And when I got there, she wasn't there. I knocked at the door, and a friend answered, and he said, Patricia isn't here, but she told me to tell you that she has never seen such a fire in a young designer before. And hearing that, I think, was what sealed my fate. You know, I think that's what made me decide that this is what I had to do. And I did. I went on to design some other things. I worked in Hollywood for a while on various Barbara Mandrell show, Ringling Brothers Circus, you know, getting basics here and there. I was in a show at the Des Moines Playhouse. I played Che in Evita, and invited Liza Minnelli, who was in town performing, to come and see our production, and she did.
Oh my gosh.
And after the show, I told her that I was a designer. I had designed the costumes in the show, and she asked me if I would do a few sketches.
So you designed and you did Che.
Yeah.
So you really had no downtime.
No.
So
there was never.
role.
I don't even remember a lot of my life from back then. It was so frazzled and crazy. But she asked me to design some things for her, which I did. I also designed at the American Heartland Theater in Kansas City.
I'm sorry, go back. Liza Minnelli. What did you design for her?
Actually, she was on tour at the time, and she said, you know, just design me a couple of things that could kind of supplement what I'm doing. So I did some paintings of, it was a beaded dress with a big beaded feather boa, you know, which is very Liza.
Sure.
You know, and she, I think it was more, not necessarily that she was ever going to wear these things, but she, again, you know, it was seeing someone who just really had this fire in them and wanting to help them get a leg up. So I had these things for my portfolio then, you know.
Right.
It was really exciting. Again, I went to then in Kansas City, the American Heartland Theater, where I designed Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And this is another thing that sort of catapulted me. The woman playing Maggie was Deborah Raffin, and her husband is Michael Wiener, who was a producer who was doing a Sidney Sheldon miniseries with Omar Sharif and Jane Seymour, and she asked him to ask me to be the costume designer on the miniseries. So I got to go to Yugoslavia for 4 months and work on this film. I had never done film before, and I was very excited about the possibility, but it was very daunting also. There was a war going on in Yugoslavia at the time. We had to, we stayed at the Intercontinental Hotel, and every morning had to sign a waiver that our bags were packed and we were ready to leave in case something happened.
So really great working conditions.
Oh, it was horrible. We
Yeah.
had armed guards on every floor of the hotel. Yeah, it was amazing. And being away from my daughter was what I really couldn't stand about that. I was gone for 4 months, and she was about 10 years old, and a lot of things changing in her life
Right,
that I
that's
did not
right.
want to miss
Right.
anymore. And so I decided at that time that costuming was going to have to go on the back burner, and that I needed to go home and just do something fashion related, because I knew I wanted to stay in that kind of creative environment or realm. And so I went back to Des Moines, Iowa, and I decided I was going to open a shop in a quaint little place called Valley Junction in West Des Moines, actually, Iowa. And I opened a shop where I did custom design clothing, special occasion kind of things, bridal gowns, and that kind of stuff, so that I could work in fashion and still be close to home. And that's actually what sort of, by happenstance, I ended up meeting someone who brought me into the quilting industry.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail, but we have just a few more seconds. I was
Sure.
wondering, do you have any words of wisdom or tips for people who maybe are more garment sewers and how they can apply some of those skills to quilting if it's something that they haven't tried yet? Or
You know, it's honestly a natural transition, because if you can sew a garment, you can sew a quilt. Quilting,
yeah, the other way is a little bit
it's
more
a little
challenging,
harder,
but
yeah.
going from garments to quilts is
It's a much
pretty
simpler-
natural progression.
Yeah, more, you know, with quilting, in most quilting, you're using more straight seams. You're not having
Yeah.
to worry about shaping something to, you know, forming something to another shape,
Right.
which is what garment construction is more like sculpture, you know, and it's a whole different kind of creativity and a whole different way of thinking. So to go from garment to quilting is fairly easy.
Okay, all right. Well, that was talking about his theater background and how that influenced his work in the quilt industry. And as you said, the next chapter of your life was you and your shop, which we are going to talk about more in our next episode. So please join us at quiltersnewsletter.com to see all of our episodes with Patrick, and we will see you next time.
Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters Community, is brought to you by Handy Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. Robert Kaufman Fabrics, quality fabrics for quilting. Sulky, express yourself with Sulky and create with confidence. And The Warm Company, inspiring products for creative people.